Okay, welcome back. So today I'm going to talk about Smirnov Anton and also Cheng Sky games for 2021 April and 4th of April. Yeah. So this is a game occurred recently and now I'm going to explain about it. It's a French defense game. E4, E6, a normal setup for French defense. D4, D5, knight to C3, knight to F6, D5, E5 is trying to grab the F6 knight, knight to D7, knight to E2. Yeah, the idea of knight to E2 is going for C3 and also knight to F3. C5, played by Cheng Sky, and C3, knight to C6, F4. Yeah, obviously F4 ideas is to break through the F5 squares. Bishop to E7, knight to F3, castling, bishop to E3, F6. Yeah, it obviously seems that F6 tries to break the white's pawn chain in E5 and breaks white pawn structure. So white plays for G3, which occurs and forms a pyramid for white, a pawn structure pyramid, which is very beautiful and strong. Queen to B6. So now Cheng Sky tries to play for Queen to B6 to grab on B2 pawns, and obviously for white, who is very intelligent, I think he will play for Queen to D2 and protect the B2 pawn. But in this game, Smirnov Anton play for Bishop to H3, which is a counter attack for white to black, and he's trying to attack on the E6 pawn and also check on the king. So first of all, let's see whether Queen takes B2 or other move can be played. First of all, Queen takes B2. Queen takes B2. White will answer that bishop to E6 check and also king to H8, bishop to D5, which white gains a pawn and black had lost a pawn after this capitalization. And also the C3 pawn cannot be captured by the queen because of the knight in E2 protects the C3 pawn. So right now, bishop to H3, blacks cannot make a progress in B2 pawn. So blacks plays for C takes to D4, bishop take, knight take, knight take, and now you may observe that the E2 knight is not protecting the C3 pawn, and now black can go on in Queen to B2. Yeah, it may go on Queen to B2 and bishop to E6, king to H8, bishop to E7. D7 is the best choice for white. And now here's two options for white, which for black, which is Queen to C3 or bishop to E7. First of all, let's see bishop to E7. After bishop to E7, white can place for E6, which try to capture the bishop in D7. And black can now play for Queen to C3, which check the king in E1, king to E2. Why does white play for king to E2? It is because of there's no any checks for black in B5 or either any squares for to check the king and danger the king. Yeah, if there is a check, I think it is Queen to C4. Queen to C4, and we'll just play for king to F2, and it is safe for us. And also, in this case, king to E2, the E6 pawn is still challenged the D7 bishop, and also the rook in A1 is trying to go to C1 and try to penetrate the C file. Yeah, so coming back the game, knight takes. Here, I think it cannot be Queen to B2, so he grab on E5 pawn. Grab after grabbing Queen to B2. Bishop takes on E6, check, king to H8. White plays for safe and is castling in king side to protect the king safety. Queen to C3. Now white feels that there is something that he needed to do to prevent the catalyze for black to develop its pieces. So he plays for Queen to B3, which is trying to exchange the queen with black because of if you observe the position carefully, you see that the rook in a8 and the bishop in c8 for black is very bad, and the rook in a1 and rook in f1 for white rooks is very better and better than black's rook. And also you may see that the knight in d4 and f3 have already generate a chain and a lock which protect each other, and also the e5 pawn is protected by e4. No, not e4. f3 knight. Yeah, this is a very strong position for white, so Smirnov Anton decided to play for an exchange of queen. So black exchange of queen. So right now, you may pause the video and try to figure out whether we have two choices for grabbing a queen. What would I choose and also you choose? Either pawn grab or knight grab. Okay, welcome back. So for me and also for the player Smirnov Anton, he decided to play for pawn grab. It's because of the after pawn grabbing, the knight in d4 is very strong, and also the f3 knight is protecting the d4 knight as I mentioned before. And moreover, d4 knight is an outpost for white because of there's no pawn in c5 to try to challenge the d4 knight. It's very obvious that if there is something that can challenge the knight in d4, it must be bishop to c5. Let's see, bishop to c5. So right now, black plans is to change the d4 knight and grab, and after changing d4 knight and knight takes, he's planning for knight to d4. So right now, after knight, let me see, after knight takes, bishop takes, knight takes, he'll play for rook to f1 first, and rook takes, yeah, and g6. Yeah, you prevent something in counterplay here and try to grab on the e5 pawn. So after bishop c5, I will play for bishop to d7, bishop takes back, and rook to c1. Rook to c1 is a strong move which try to challenge the c5 bishop and also try to get to c7 squares. And after b takes d4, white can play for knight to d4, and now it seems very obvious that rook to c7 is not a dream anymore, and the knight to d4, knight in e4 is very comfortable as it has no danger on it. e5 pawn has the advanced spaces for it in e6 and challenge the bishop in d7. So coming back right now, after the pawn grab the b3 queen, black decided to play for knight to c5. Knight to c5 is very obvious that he needs to trade on the bishop in e6 with the bishop in c8, since the e6 bishop is stronger than c8 bishop. Now white plays for knight to g5, which is a very obvious and strong move. Knight to g5, the main idea is to protect the e6 bishop and also knight to f7 check the king. If black plays for bishop to g5, white will consider a win by rook to f8, which is a checkmate. And right now, black will only do is rook to f1, and bishop takes, knight takes, knight takes, knight takes. This is already occurred in the game, and I'm not going to explain on it because of it's just a trading on pieces. And now black plays for king to g8, white plays for rook to d1 to attack the pawn in d5. Yeah, so black plays for d4. Right now, if we take the pawn with rook, king to f7 will occur and try to chase away our knight in e6. Now knight to f4, bishop to c5 is a pin, so we can't grab on the d4 pawn. So what can we do? Knight grab? Or maybe you would say that knight grab is a choice, but after rook to d8, king to g2 to avoid the pin, bishop to c5 tries to grab the knight. Yeah, it's a loss in material. If we play for knight to f3, just rook to d1, capture the rook. Yeah, we lost off the material. Yeah. So after d4, white plays for king to g2, and black plays for rook to e8. Now something blows up white's mind. He thinks that the e6 knight is very strong, but after the bishop or in e7 had run off, I can't do any progress on the e5 pawn. I need to protect the e5 pawn. So he plays for knight to f4, which trying to go to d3 and protects the e5 squares. So now bishop to g5, black tries to exchange of the knight to create a winning position since he is one pawn up. Knight to d3 tries to protect the e5 pawn, rook to f8, rook to a1, a6 to prevent the capture in a7, rook to a4 trying to capture on d4, bishop to e3. The bishop e3 has generated a lock and key system, which is the d4 pawn is protecting the e3 bishop, and also the b3 bishop is protecting the d4 pawn. So right now white plays for rook to c4, trying to go to c7 rank and also grab some pawn in c7 rank. So right now black goes to h5 to try on h4 and try to bait on, and also try to bait on the pawn structure in the king side. So white plays for h4 to prevent the continuous advance in h5. Right now black plays for g5. After pawn grabs, king to g7, e6. e6 is obvious that one of the options is to go to e5 and also rook to c7 check. The rook cannot get up to f7 and white can capture on b7 pawn. So right now black plays for bishop to g5, rook to c7, king to f6, knight to c5. Yeah, knight to c5 is obvious that he wants to go to d7 and try to check and also fork the rook. Rook to g8. Right now the black's idea is bishop to f4, which is double attack on the rook and also the pawn in g3. Rook takes b7, d3. Yeah, d3 is obvious that is very clear that if we directly place for bishop to h4, there is a check in knight to e4, which protect the e3, the g3 pawn by the knight. So black's plays for d3, let the knight go away and can protect the g3 pawn by checking in e4 squares. Knight to d3, king to e6, rook to b6, king to f5, rook takes a6, bishop to h4. And right now very unfortunately that white cannot save the pawn by his rook and also knight, because there is no squares for it to save the pawn in g3 without sacrifice any pieces. So right now white play for rook to a5, rook to f6, rook to a6, king to f5, king to h3, trying to get out of the rook to g3 check. Yeah. So right now rook to g3 check and fork the d3 knight, king to h4, rook to d3. Right now a draw is agreed because of insufficient material on not insufficient material. It's very hard for white and black to win the game for rook pawn and rook pawn endgame. So this is a game where Sicilian defense is carry out, and also the Smirnov Anton and also Cheng Bobby Sky plays a good game for us. I hope you guys learn a lot, learn something. Yeah, I will continue to update my channel every day. See you then. Bye.